Hi, and welcome to In the Loop. My name is Shane Finster, and we are here with Beau Evans from the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
Thanks for having
Welcome.
me.
Thank you. So, for anyone unfamiliar with the program, what is it that you do?
Well, deal with pretty much traffic safety related to the roadway in all aspects. Law enforcement initiatives, public education, some data analysis and studies. So anything to do with highway safety is pretty much my realm.
Great. So, we're here today to discuss occupant protection. So, I know that is a huge topic. So, let's get into a couple specifics here. Safety belts. We all have them in our vehicles. How important is it that we wear them?
And that's the age-old question. A lot of folks that grew up without safety belts in the vehicle say that you don't need them. I grew up where safety belts were already in the vehicle, so I automatically used it. The importance of wearing your seatbelt is this: if you're traveling, let's say 30 miles an hour. You weigh 120 pounds. You take 120, multiply that by 30. That's how much force it's going to take to keep you from moving if the car would happen to suddenly stop in an impact. So that is hundreds of thousands of pounds of force that is having to hold you in place. The only thing that has been shown to keep that force on you, to keep you in place, is a seatbelt. Some things that mothers maybe want to do is have their children ride on their lap. You know, there's no way that they could hold down their child with that much force. So that's kind of one thing that I like to compare that to. Another importance is it keeps things in the vehicle from moving around. So let's say if everybody but one person has their seatbelt on in a vehicle of 4 occupants, then the one that does not have their seatbelt on becomes a projectile in the vehicle. Anything that's loose in the vehicle becomes a projectile. So anything that can be tied down, the better. And seatbelts are one of those things of keeping you locked into that position. Maybe even folks think that they would be rather thrown away from the crash than actually be inside the crash. Fortunately, cars nowadays are actually made to withstand those impacts and absorb the impact. So you're sort of like in a little cocoon. You're safer by being inside that little cocoon and the car absorbing those impacts almost like a sponge, than you being tossed out of the vehicle, let's say through the windshield. First you got to go through the windshield,
Right.
which is
glass.
very tough. That's a lot of force to break a windshield. And then you travel in any direction. You could be traveling in the direction of where the car is rolling. You could also be flung away from the crash. Hopefully you are, but where are you going to land? There's a lot of signs on the roadway. There's guardrails. There's, poles.
Other vehicles.
Other vehicles. I mean, you could be tossed into oncoming traffic. That I would rather take my chances on staying safe inside the seatbelt and inside the car than being tossed onto the hard ground, into a pole, into another vehicle, going through the windshield. Anytime that somebody is ejected, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be a pretty sight. And they could be killed or they could be paralyzed for life. When just wearing a seatbelt, they could have just received a seatbelt burn across their chest. They'll get over that, a bruise. If they're wearing their seatbelt properly, maybe a cracked rib if they are wearing it improperly.
So in terms of where you had discussed using seatbelts properly, and thinking back to generations where perhaps seatbelts were not even installed in vehicles yet, one of the first stages was a lap belt, and I still hear folks to this day talk about the discomfort with wearing the shoulder piece of the safety belt, where it either cuts into their neck or makes it awkward for them in the driving position. Are there any alternative ways to effectively use the safety belt as opposed to the lap and the shoulder piece?
There are a couple things. Doctors can also check with your doctor, because sometimes folks with medical conditions cannot wear an actual lap shoulder belt properly with the condition that they have. So it's possible that the doctor could give you sort of a waiver for that. I'm not saying that it's right to just say, "Oh, doctor, I need a waiver because I don't like to wear my seatbelt." That's not the case. The case of it is if you have a medical condition that prohibits you from wearing a seatbelt safely, then that can be an avenue that you look at. One problem about the lap shoulder belt, the shoulder part cutting into your neck, that is an issue. You do not want it near your neck if you're having to be involved in a crash, because it can strangle you. It can cut into your neck. So the best thing to do, they have adjusters on the sides of your vehicles now to adjust those seat belts. If the seat belt is still cutting into your neck after you've adjusted that, you probably need to adjust your seat and actually adjust the seat to where it is not going to cut into your neck. I always think of an airplane sitting in the upright position, tray tables up, upright position. That is kind of, you want to have your seat not laid back so far that it's a recliner. You want it up so you can actually be, actually up to that seat belt, so you're actually protected by that seat belt.
I see. So one thing I always think of is you're driving around in downtown areas around here. You see the lazy, what I call the lazy driver, that's slumped over on their armrest, and it honestly wouldn't surprise me a bit if they were complaining of the seatbelt not fitting properly in that case. Mm-hmm. So any other recommendations in terms of basic safety with safety belts? I'm thinking in terms of children, for example. Do they fall under the same guidelines as an adult, either driver or passenger, in terms of how they need to be secured in the vehicle?
And that opens the floodgates to a wide variety of how children need to ride in a vehicle safely. And our stance, our recommendation, what we follow with NHTSA's guidelines and the actual Highway Traffic Safety Administration is the best fit for the child. So a child that is just born to about 2 years of age needs to be rear facing. Up to 2 years of age or longer needs to be rear facing as long as possible. They could be in an infant seat, which has the handle, the carrier that you can pop out of and carry with you, or you can have a convertible seat, which is one that can go rear facing or forward facing. And the reason why they call them convertibles is they convert.
Either way.
So you need to have them properly restrained in one of those types of seats. Then, after 2 years of age, or until the child reaches the weight limit of the rear-facing side, you can turn them forward-facing, and they'll go forward-facing until they're ready for a booster. Typically, a booster is age 5, 6, maybe somewhere around there, depending on how fast the child's developing, how much they weigh, how tall they are, what their age is. All those are factors into which seat that the child will go into.
So is there kind of a standard on height, weight, age, something like that, in terms of when they can convert from the convertible seat to a booster and then onward to traditional seating arrangement?
That's sort of the gray area that you have to take a case by case. It is either going to be, they can turn when they reach the weight limit of the seat. They've maxed it out at that seat, so they either need to go to a new seat or they need to be turned forward. Convertible seats have a weight limit that's different rear facing than it is forward facing. So let's say it's probably about 40 pounds rear facing, and then it goes to 65 pounds forward facing. So that would be the your transition period. I would max them out rear facing all the way to the 40, and then you turn them, and then you max it out to the 65. I would wait till you max out the seat to the weight limit that it specifies in either direction before you would change. It's not safe to exceed those weight limits because the straps are not made and designed that way, and they weren't tested that way when the manufacturers actually made the seat.
So if you frequent yard sales or anything like that in any capacity, it's pretty common to find used car seats, used booster seats. Is that a good idea? Is it safe? Is it unsafe? Is there an expiration date per se? Let's talk about that just a little bit. $50 versus $5. Is it worth the safety of the child? Is my bottom line question on that.
It's not worth the safety of the child. You don't know the history of one that's at a yard sale. It could have been involved in a crash. It could be expired, and we'll get to that here in a minute. That in itself is not enough to guarantee the child's safety. So where you go to the store, you buy one for 50, 60, 70 bucks, that you know the history of. It's brand new. It's in a box. It hasn't been used before, and it comes straight from the manufacturer. If you have one that, let's say, a family member had, let's say that your sister had one and you wanted to use that for your child, you probably know the history of that one and you trust them enough that they told you everything about the seat. They maybe kept the instruction book, so they actually gave you the instruction book. It has all of its labels on it. Then that's a seat that you would feel comfortable with buying. That's the only time that I would say that you would be comfortable with, or that I would feel comfortable with, if you knew the history of it. If you don't know the history of it, don't buy it. Throw it away. Cut the straps out of it. If you do have an old seat, cut the straps out of them and take them apart. That way you do not have the chance of it being taken out of the trash and somebody else reusing it. Now, expired seats, you'd mentioned, seats do expire. They last longer than your regular milk in the refrigerator, but they do expire. They last about 6 years. Most seats, actually all of them, from these recent years, past couple years, and forward, actually have a sticker on the back that says the day they were manufactured and then the day that they will expire. With the older seats, they may not have the date of expiration, but they have the date that they were manufactured. So in that case, you count 6 years up from the date of manufacture, and that's the rule of thumb. So if you have a seat that's lasted longer than 6 years, little Johnny's had it, little Susie's had it, and now little Billy's going to have it, and it's 15 years old, you need a new seat.
Yeah.
And the reason why is, especially in the kind of climate that we have here in Appalachia, you have one day it's 20-some degrees, and then the next day it could be 60 or 70 degrees. that heating and expanding of the plastic can wear down on those seats, and then after 6 or 7 years, you just can't guarantee the safety of that seat anymore. So that's why the recommendation from all car seat manufacturers is 6 years is the limit that can go to for expired seats. And again, with expired seats or seats that are involved in crashes, they're no good anymore. Even if it was a small fender bender, you got to pull them out, you got to cut the straps out, destroy them, and that's exactly what we do in our program when we have child safety seat clinics and checkup events. Any old seats, anything that's been involved in a crash, just cut the straps out of them and toss them.
Great. So, well, Beau, I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for talking through occupant protection, I think fundamental topic here to anytime you consider even getting behind the wheel. So for In the Loop, I'm Shane Finster with Armstrong. Thank you.